Hey, Seth here from BlenderSensei.com. Today I'm going to show you how I made that little legally distinct from Pac-Man, non-Pac-Man animation at the beginning of this video. And I did that using curves and with the special help of a free add-on that comes bundled with Blender called Curve Tools. So to enable Curve Tools, all you need to do is go to Edit, Preferences, and then click Add-ons, and it's right up here near the top. Notice that there is a little exclamation sign here, and what that's saying is this is a WIP, work in progress, so it is a little bit buggy, and maybe save often as you're testing it out. So let's click this checkbox. That installs it, so we'll close that up and close this out. Activating that add-on, I'm going to go ahead and open our sidebar, added this edit menu, and it gives us all the stuff on this edit tab. Okay, to get started here, I'm going to delete this default cube, and I'm going to come up into the outliner, and I'm going to hide the camera and the light so they're not getting in my way. Let's press Shift A, and under Curve, add a Bezier, which is the basic curve situation here. And up here at the Curve Info menu, we can learn all sorts of things about our nice curve. So we can press Curve, and this tells us how many splines, how many segments, and how many empty splines. The NR, I'm not sure if that means something or that was supposed to be an ASCII literal code. It's in code, you have these little symbols that you put by things to, it's not important. The point is, I'm not sure if that's supposed to be there, but it does tell us how many splines, which a spline in a curve, by the way, is what you would think of as the curve, right? So I could extrude this a few times, and this whole thing is one spline. If I press A to select it all and I duplicate it, I now have two splines in my curve object. So when we go back into object mode, this is still one thing. This is still thought of as the curve, but the splines are individual components of that curve. So now if we press curve, it'll say, hey, you got two splines, 8 segments, which a segment is the actual line part between each point. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4 on each of those. That makes 8. So that all checks out. If we click spline, we get basically the same readout. We have a little message here saying there's more information in the console, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. If we press segment, we get the same information basically for all three of these. Length will, however, tell us the combined total length of all the splines. So you can see it's 12.8 or something. If I were to move this a little bit longer and press length again, you can see that number increases. This also increases if I duplicate a spline. We press length. You can see it's much longer because it's actually calculating the entire length of all these points, which is pretty useful. The next menu, the Curve Edit menu, this is the main dish of the add-on as far as I'm concerned. And it's full of a lot of really useful tools that can help Blender behave more like Inkscape or Illustrator or something like that. Okay, I'm going to press Tab to go back into object mode and delete these. And let's add a curve circle so I can begin to demonstrate some of these curve edit tools. So I'll press Tab to go back into edit mode. Actually, before I get started, I'm going to show you a cool trick. We can turn this circle into a square by right-clicking, and then under set handle type, we can change these to vector, which they actually already were vector, but this just resets them. And because the circle is composed of those 4 points, when it did that, it just, circle became a square. And we could go ahead and press R to rotate, Control to constrain, until this was a proper square. I'm also going to come up here in the overlays menu, and I'm going to temporarily change the handles to none so we can see this a little bit better. Okay, so let's click a point, and if we press fillet chamfer, I know some people will be wanting to say fillet, but I've been instructed by a reliable source that fillet is the engineering way to pronounce the word, and fillet is the cooking way, so I don't know if that's right or not. I'm just going to call it fillet. But anyway, you can see what it did. It beveled that curve. This is definitely one of those add-ons that you want to have the adjust last operation menu open with. And so if you've turned that off at some point, that can be found under view and adjust last operation. So here we can adjust the radius of the fillet, the bevel, whatever you want to call it. Or we can change this on the fly to chamfer, which basically just makes it into a straight cut like that. We can do this to multiple edges at the same time. So I could click here and shift click this point and then do that to both of these and change these up and change this up to round if I wanted to, like this. Next we have outline, which will create an outline of our curve. So let's press that. And here we can control the offset where it says amount. So you can see I'm kind of pushing that out. We could do it something like that. Looks pretty good. Right about now, you might be thinking, I would like to turn this into a sidewalk. And so to do that, we can come to the Data tab of the Properties panel. And so to do that, we would want to switch the shape from 3D to 2D and switch the fill mode to both. That way, whether we're looking underneath or on top, we have a nice renderable piece of content. So if you're not familiar with the difference between 2D and 3D curves, basically the most important difference is that if it's on 2D, we get to have filled in area like this, but you don't get a third dimension when adjusting your points. So I could, grab this up, down, whatever. It's never going to leave this plane like this. If it's on 3D, it can go, wherever you want. And you do have the option under geometry of extruding and beveling. So you can do like this, and you can extrude. And you can do those when the shape is set to 2D as well, but you don't get the area display. So let me turn that back to 0 and that back to 0. So just a quick note on the difference between 3D and 2D. Okay, I'm going to close this menu so I don't have to look at this while I'm trying to focus on this. So far we've got fillet chamfer, or basically beveling points. We have outline, which we use to create this kind of sidewalk from our initial spline here. And then we have recursive offset, which is basically outline, but an array of outlines that extend as far out as you want them to. So if we press this, this creates an outline, but more. So we can click open the controls. We can control the offset value here. And we can control the count, make this bigger and bigger. This pitch value controls the distance between our added outlines. And then we have this option here, which will round off corners if you want to do that for some reason. And we can control the resolution of all of it as well. So between these options, you can get some pretty interesting looking results. So next up, we have separate offset selected, and you can use this to select some points or segments and then separate them into another object. So I could hold down middle mouse and tap Alt to get into the top orthographic view here and box select, let's say these 12 points here, press separate offset selected. And now those segments have been moved into a different object. I'm still in my original object, but those points have been moved. So if I were to tap A to select everything and G to grab, you can see everything else moves, but that stays there. So we press tab to go back into object mode, select these, and then delete them. And I like the way this looked before. So I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to close off these paths. And once they are completed full shapes, they will be solid again. So with those 2 points selected, I'll press F, and then we'll go ahead and close this off, and then close this off. And then now that's all that's left to complete each circuit is to go down here, press F, select these two, press F, select these two, press F. So I seem to get mixed results with the extend handles option. First of all, you're going to get an error if you don't have your handles set to selected or all, I guess. Make sure this isn't on none, or you'll just get errors using a lot of the rest of these tools. So if I were to press A to select everything and press extend handles, nothing happens. So I'm not sure what happened there. Sometimes I get a little error message saying that a curve wasn't selected when it was. However, if we use this tool on something simple, such as a circle, then pressing this seems to make the handles go straight, I guess. Essentially, a shortcut for right-clicking and setting the handle type to vector, I guess. That seems to be what happens. So if I press Control Z a few times to get back to where we were, and I just select one of these points, see that time it just said nothing selected. I guess maybe at least 2 points have to be selected. There we get a result, and will we get a result here? Okay, so we're getting results here and there, but in general, I've found the behavior of this option to be kind of inconsistent, but a quick way to get a leveled square at the very least. So we'll delete that. Boolean splines will perform Boolean operations, that is uniting two curves or subtracting from two curves, similar to like Pathfinder and Illustrator. This option does not like very complex curve shapes, that is curves with a lot of splines like this one. However, it works well when performing operations on two splines within a curve object. So for instance, we could add another circle and then press tab to go into edit mode and duplicate this and move this over here. You do want to make sure, once again, that the handles option is set to selected or all. If it's set on none, you'll get an error when using this. You can either Alt-Shift select the second spline you want to perform an operation on, or if you only have two splines in the whole curve object, you can just tap A to select everything, press Boolean Splines, and we get a message, can only be applied in 2D. So the default curve shapes when you add in Blender, they're set by default to 3D, so we need to come in here and change this to 2D first. And now when we press Boolean Splines, hooray, we get a default union Boolean operation, which join those two splines. But we have some other options here. We could use difference, and that cut into the spline there, or intersection, which gives us the resulting shape. Subdivide will subdivide our lines with a slight advantage over the default subdivision tool, which you can use by selecting whatever you want to subdivide, right-clicking, and pressing subdivide. The advantage with this option is that if we press subdivide, we then get a slider where we can move the points that were subdivided wherever we want along their segments. Multi-subdivide, I'm not entirely sure what this does. Sometimes when I press it, I get errors. Or sometimes when I press it, it gives me this menu and I can enter different values. So I don't know, we'll change these to something else. And I press enter, and then this adjusts where the subdivision points are. I'm not entirely sure what these parameters are referring to. And then if we press tab to go back into object mode and click back on our main object we've been working on here, you can use split at vertex to split off a segment at a specific point without affecting the rest of the shape of the object. So if we click split at vertex, this is now split off this point, but notice that it didn't mess up the rest of the shape or anything, which is nice. It did for some reason turn off cyclic. Cyclic is an option for each spline in a curve that will cause a shape to become complete, and once the shape is complete, it can become filled if it is a 2D shape, and the cyclic option is under active spline. And for some reason, this option turns off cyclic for all of these, because cyclic was on for all of these. As you can see, we had all this here. Now it makes sense for it being off here because where was that point that we segmented here? Since this would no longer complete this circuit, having cyclic on here would look weird, and I can understand having the add-on automatically disabling that so you don't immediately get some weird result like that. But be aware that it will turn off cyclic for all splines in your curve object. One really useful feature about this split at vertex is if you're like trying to create a half circle. I've had trouble trying to successfully create a half circle without having to add all sorts of extra points on the default curve circle. So if we press tab to go back into object mode, I press Shift A and add a Bezier circle here. So normally, if I turn off cyclic of the default circle, we get this shape. So you can see you'd have to spend some time messing around with this to try to get it to look like a decent half circle. Or if you turn cyclic back on and you select a point, like say you want to delete that there, I could press X and I have these three options. None of them will do what I want. That's not what I want. That's not what I want, because it didn't do anything because it was just a single point. Maybe we could select from there to there. Delete that segment. Nope. And dissolve vertices here. Nope. So the split vertex is very useful if you're trying to create a half circle without having to, subdivide it a million times. So once you delete these points, it's not all weird. You can do this with the default circle. I can click here and split it vertex. And now I have this segment here I can delete. And I've got a perfect half circle made of only 3 points. As you can see, this can be really useful when you need to preserve the shape, but also get rid of some things. Discretize curve seems to do the same thing as if you were to convert a curve into a mesh and then back into a curve again, which I'm not sure what the point of that is. But if we press this and press discretize curve, I guess it means we have created discrete segment points. This actually creates a new poly line from your Bezier spline. For array splines, we can press tab to go back into object mode, and I'm going to go ahead and delete everything and just add a new basic Bezier curve. Then I'm going to go into edit mode, and let's see if we can press extend handles. Okay, so that gave us a weird result there. Hold Control Z to undo that. What I want is for this default spline to be straight, so I'm going to right click, set handle type to vector. Nice good trick for that. So up until now, most of these options have been specifically for using curves as a 2D shape, but array splines is really most useful when using the 3D shape setting. So I can subdivide this and make something like this. And then we press array splines. What do you mean nothing selected? I guess I have to select the entire spline, press array splines. That was indeed what it wanted. It wanted the entire spline selected. Fair enough. We can open up the adjust last operation menu here, and here we can control the offset of the array and then the count of the array. Then we can choose to have these connect, and we can use this serpentine or snake basically option to get results like this. So under geometry, we could increase the depth, and you can see how you can make some pretty interesting curve-based objects this way. Okay, so that does it for curve edit. And like I said, I think this is really the bulk of your most useful tools are in this menu here. The intersect menu does provide similar options as the Boolean options in the curve edit, but these are for performing operations while in object mode, so you use multiple curve objects rather than using splines in edit mode of a single curve. So to get started here, I'm going to go to File, New, General, Don't Save. So I've got a fresh Blender file here. I'm going to hide my camera and my light. Delete that default cube. Okay, so back over in Curve Tools onto the Intersect menu. And as I said before, these options are for doing stuff while in object mode. So while in object mode, let's add a circle curve, and I'll duplicate this and move it over, and I'll shift select this other one. And if I press this button, I can perform a Boolean option. And if we come down here and click open the tool operator menu, similar to the curve edit menu, we have the same options. So we could perform a union, which is what has happened now. As you can see, that's the new object there. It's the formed out of those two objects. I'll right click to move that back. We could do difference instead. And there I grab the newly formed object. You can see it there. Or we could do intersection, which would produce this. And when we're on difference, you can pick which of the objects that you want to change the operation to. So say you had the wrong object active when you got started, you can switch that over with these values while in difference, so that's useful. Most of these other options, I've either found them to produce no difference, so changing the algorithm from 3D to view, for instance. Control Z again, make sure it's actually on from view this time, 2D curve Boolean. But even when it is, I still get the same results. So I don't know if these are unfinished or I'm using them wrong, but the only useful bit I've found in the intersect section is using the 2D curve Boolean option while in object mode if you want to perform Boolean operations on individual curve objects. Onto the surfaces menu. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and delete all of this and add another circle. Bi-Rail is a tool that can be found in CAD software and other 3D tools. And what this will do is it will take 3 curve objects and convert them into a skin. So we could say have a circle here and make a circle here. It could be a different size. And then we need a third object to define basically the wormhole between here to here. So we'll add a Bezier curve. I'll move it down, go into edit mode, and I'll just extrude some points out for this demonstration. And so once you have 3 curve objects selected, this option will become available, and then you can press this button and it creates a meshed pathway using the 3 curve objects like this. We can also convert curve objects to curve surface objects using this button right here. Just a quick way to do that. I haven't used surfaces very much in Blender. They seem kind of limited to me. I get their potential in terms of resource management. I think that's potentially the biggest advantage to curved surfaces, is the ability to create 3D shapes using less geometry, I think. Other than that, I don't know much about them. And then there's another option to convert faces to Bezier, or basically convert a mesh object to Bezier, similar to the B-Tracer add-on. So we could add a monkey Suzanne head, and any mesh object you have selected, this option will light up, and we press it. If we scroll out a little bit, we'll see where this was created at the cursor. And this is now a Bezier object. As you can see, it's a curve here in the outliner. So that means we could do things like give it depth like this, and similar options to the B-Tracer add-on there. Okay, I'm gonna tap A, select everything, and delete it. These Loft options, Loft performs similar operations as the Bi-Rail, but works a little bit differently. And there's a feature here where you can auto update your Loft. So Loft basically takes 2 curve objects, such as this. Let's go in and edit this one a bit so it's not so plain Jane. I'll tap W to subdivide, and I'll select some of these points and scale them. So I have a different looking object here this time, and we'll add another circle. And I'll rotate it and move it back over here. Maybe scale it a bit. Loft needs 2 curve objects, and as soon as we have them, we can press Loft. And this creates a sheath between these 2 curve objects. If I were then to adjust one of these objects like this, we can turn on Auto Loft, press Update Auto Loft, and then click the Loft object that was created, the Mesh Loft object, and it will update like that. So we could do that for the other part of this as well. Say we rotated it and scaled it. We could press Update, Auto Loft, and then click that, and it updates. So once again, I know that these kind of tools are available in other software. I'm not sure I entirely understand the point of this when this can already be accomplished with curves and extruding the curves and curve geometry, as well as bevel profiles, but I guess it's there for those who want it. All right, so on to the sanitize menu here. So most of these options will become available when we have an actual curve object selected. So I'll just select these other 2 objects and delete them, and select our kind of amoeba shaped curve here. First option, set origin to spline start. So splines have a beginning and end point as a part of their anatomy. And so this will move this object's origin, which is at the center, to the start of the spline. And so if we press tab to go into object mode, we should be able to see it. There it is right up at the top where the spline starts. Reset scale, I have no idea what this does because if you scale the curve and press this, it does nothing. So typically in 3D programs, if you scale an object, that scale isn't applied to the data, the curve, the mesh, whatever lives inside of the object, until you go to Object, apply scale or rotation or location depending on what it is you're wanting to apply. So that doesn't do anything in edit or object mode, so I'm not really too sure. The remove doubles should merge points that are near each other, but that doesn't work how I expect it to. For instance, if I select this point and I duplicate it, then I right click to snap it back to where it was. So now I know there's this extra floating point out in the middle of nowhere, or it's an extra floating point sitting on top of a point that's actually connected to the rest of the segments. And if I press remove doubles, nothing gets removed. If I select everything, press remove doubles, nothing gets removed. There is this menu over here where we can adjust the threshold, so it's at 0.01. But if I keep moving it higher and higher, it will just go until the whole thing breaks down. And that point actually is still there. So not sure what the point of that is. But I do get expected results from remove 0 segment splines. So if we press that, notice it will say removed 1 of 2 splines, assuming that it was talking about that point that we created also must have had technically its own spline. And that's not the point, that's the origin. Just to make things extra confusing, but that point is gone now. We can remove splines of a certain length, which could be useful. Let's just add a Bezier spline into our curve object, and let's duplicate this a few times, and then we'll make a much longer one like this. And so say you had, I don't know, weird hair strands or something going on, you can press short splines. And for some reason they decided to put this option where you can update it beforehand here and not in the operator menu. I don't know why they would do that here but not everywhere else. But you can increase this threshold and nothing's removed. Increase it a bit more. And as you can see, the shortest of all these splines was removed once we increased the threshold to a certain degree. Join neighbors will join anything of a certain distance. So I could say move this over here like this, and I should be able to press this and nothing happens, so we increase the threshold, and you see that joined because we increased the threshold beyond those 2 points. Once again, my experiments with this option and these 2 options has yielded no fruit, but the actual operation does work when controlling the threshold. Finally, onto the utilities menu. Okay, so I'm going to go into object mode, delete all this, and let's just add another basic curve here. And we'll press tab to go into edit mode. So we can show the curve resolution, which can be found in the active spline, which is 12. So we can also set the resolution. That's just a default generic value. But this is showing how there's actually 12 points created out of this resolution. But if we were to press set resolution, that would increase it to 64, obviously a lot more. This is a way of visually seeing how that looks. If you want this stuff to go away, you have to press escape on the keyboard. So I would expect this to work in a way where you press show and then you click it again to hide it. But that's not the case. You need to press escape when you want it to go away. And we can view the spline order. So I only have 1 spline here, so it's drawing a 0, but we could press A to select everything and duplicate this, and you can see even as I duplicate this, the numbers go up, line go up, numbers go up, and then we can adjust the font size. If we press escape and then show again, it'll be much, much bigger. That's way too big. Likewise, we can adjust the thickness, but no need to do that really. We can switch the order of the splines, which this ends up having use with different combinations of modifiers and stuff like that. So it can be useful to know which spline is where. You can also switch the direction, and you can also set the start points. So there's only two points on each of these curves because they're only 2 points long, but we could extrude them a bit, and we could set first start points to over here as opposed to over there. Okay, so Blender just had a crasherino. So once again, while you're using this add-on, make sure to save your work frequently or keep on the autosave feature. But anyway, this last feature, Pathfinder, I'm not entirely sure the purpose of this. I think the idea is if you're trying to locate a path or curved spline in, I don't know, maybe an ungodly mess of splines, is maybe my guess here. This can help you do that. So the way this works is you turn it on and then you alt select a path. I thought that's how that worked. Let's press escape to restart it. All right, let's alt select a path first then press the button. Now I think I have to alt select another path. That doesn't work. So let's see, escape, alt select a path, pathfinder, alt select a path again, and then that happened. Okay, so yeah, this feature is seems very buggy. I'm not sure what's going on here. So hopefully that wasn't too distracting. And that does it for the basic overview of the tools. Just to quickly sum things up, a lot of really useful illustratory stuff in the curve edit menu. The intersect boolean for quickly making booleans on curve objects is really useful. And then a handful of these sanitized things too. Okay, so let's make something with our new skills. Okay, got a fresh new file here. Once again, I'm going to hide the camera and the light, delete the cube, and I'm going to press Shift A. I'm going to add a circle. Then I'm going to press D to duplicate that, bring it down. Going to press Tab to go into edit mode. And in the curve edit menu, I'm going to use the extend handles. And this turns my circle into a square. Now what I want to do is merge these two curves. So I can press Tab to go back into object mode. I can shift select this, and using the intersect menu, which is object mode stuff, I can press 2D curve boolean. And if I press G to grab, I can see what has now been created. Cool. Right click to snap back to where it was. Tab to go back into object mode. And then I can delete the components which created the beginnings of my legally distinct Blinky ghost. Okay, I want to click on this, go into edit mode, make sure my guy is looking good. And I see some unnecessary points here, so we could select this, shift select this, and delete those. And I think I can delete this and this. Nope, not that one. And delete that one. And delete that one. I think actually this may have been the time to use delete to delete doubles. So let's press Control Z a bunch of times and see if that was right. Let's go to sanitize and press remove doubles. You can see it said it removed 6 Bezier points. So yeah, this is the this is the time to use remove doubles. So that did a fine job. Great. Okay, so I want to add some spikies down here. So to add some spikies, I'm going to select this bottom segment, all the points in it, and I'm going to right click and subdivide. I have that set to the hotkey W, so I can just press that and I'll press it again. And I'll select every other point by holding Shift, G to grab, middle mouse to constrain, and I've got some little spikies. So let's come down to the Data tab where the curve stuff is displayed. Make sure this is on 2D. And let's switch the fill mode from none to both. So now we've got some flesh on our ghost, as it were. And I'm going to press Tab to go back in edit mode. Shift A, add a circle. Scale that down, move it over somewhere an eye would be, stretch it out a little bit. S to scale, middle mouse to constrain, and then just pull down so it looks like that. D to duplicate it. And then we'll add another circle, kind of for the pupil there. Don't want to make sure it's not touching, or it will mess up the shape. Duplicate it over here. And now I've got a little ghost guy. Okay, got a ghost guy. Need a legally distinct pack person. So to get that, I'm going to shift right click to move the cursor. Then I'm going to press Shift S and cursor to grid, just so it will make it easier to, while I'm designing it or whatever. And let's press Shift A, curve, circle. Then we can press D to duplicate this circle, Tab to go into edit mode, turn this guy into a square by using extend handles. Then rotate this, hold Control to snap, move it over to about right there. Move these two over here. And then we'll use, actually before I do anything, I'm going to save. If you're following along with this tutorial, you should definitely do the same because this add-on's a little bit buggy right now. And let's go to intersect, do this. Make sure this is set to difference. And then, let's see, did that work? No, it didn't. Why didn't it work? Let's try it again. 2D curve Boolean. Maybe we need to change which spline it's working on. Let's see, did that work? Nope. Not sure why that's not working. So what we're going to do is do this from within edit mode, because the actual curve edit menu stuff, which is stuff you do in edit mode, seems to be a lot more stable. So let's try it there. Let's press tab to go into edit mode, duplicate this circle here, and then press extend handles. Alt select this new square I created, R to rotate, Control to constrain while I'm rotating it so I can snap it perfectly like that. Then move it over here, tap A to select all involved, and then Boolean Splines. Make sure this is set to 2D, and then Boolean Splines again. And let's do difference. Difference is what we want, but the order is not correct. So let's press Control Z. Okay, so here's the deal. Before you alt select anything, just regular click any point on the object that you want to be, or the spline that you want to be active, the thing that you want to be left over after you press this button, which I want the pack legally distinct pack person to be what's left over. So I'm just going to click any random point on it. Then we can tap A to select everything, which is just these two, then Boolean Splines, and make sure this is on difference here, and we finally get the results we're looking for. Okay, let's go into object mode, scale this up a bit. There we go, I think that's good there, and let's change the fill mode to both. Tab to go back into edit mode, Shift A, add a circle, put it about right here. And now what we want are some pellets. So actually let's select pack person and legally distinct Blinky and rotate and hold Control to constrain and bring these up to ground level here. Close that because it's getting on my nerves, and add a circle. Same thing, switch it to 2D, fill mode to both. This is going to be my pellet here. I'll hold middle mouse button and tap Alt to jump into the orthographic view. Is this the right one? Yeah. R to rotate, Control to constrain, where it's like this. Then I'm going to click on the modifier tab and add an array modifier and set X to 0, Y to 1. And then we can just control this Y value till it looks how we want. And I'll increase it and just figure out how far I want this little animation to go. So I don't know, maybe about here. Just increase these pellets. Let's go ahead and give this a name. Legally, this 2 L's, right? I'm not great at spelling. Legally distinct Blinky. It's not Blinky, it's Blinky. I'll move him down here. And name this pack person. And okay, so we want pack person to be going along their way, eating these pellets. So let's bring up the animation timeline a little bit. Let's switch the view to show seconds. And I'm gonna zoom out a little bit till this stops looking weird. And I can see 1, 2, 3, etc. And then I'm gonna click on the pack person and let's go ahead and turn on auto keyframing Then I can press G to grab, but then not move my mouse and immediately click. So I get a free keyframe there. And we'll press G to grab, middle mouse to constrain, and bring pack person to where he has consumed the last pellet. Whoops. No. Messed up there. Need to Control Z. I need to first move this to as long as I want the animation to be, which I'm going to make it, I don't know, I guess 5 seconds is fine. G to grab, middle mouse to constrain. There we go. So now we should have a keyframe there and a keyframe there. Bop, 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 bop. So now we need those pellets to go away as pack person consumes them. So let's click on the array, and we're going to want to animate this count value. So to do that, we can either press this little knobby right here. I guess we can go ahead and press that. Actually, our first frame started on frame 1, so let's move that over to where it's on frame 1. And pack person stops at frame 5. So let's have this all the way down to 1, and then since we'll have the camera in front here, we won't see what's behind. So it should look like it's consumed. We can either tap this button or tap I. And there we have pack person sort of eating the pellets. Okay, so we're going to have to do some adjustment here. There's two things we can do. We can change the length of time of the array count where it's moving, and we could also adjust the interpolation. That is, if you've ever heard the phrase easy in or easy out in web animations or anything like that, it's the same kind of deal. The interpolation is referring to how the animation curves are positioned, which we might need to adjust, but let's hopefully not. Let's see if we can adjust the distance of this bar. So that's happening way too soon. So let's grab this last frame and make it farther away. We want that one to be there. Let's see how that goes. Okay, so let's adjust the offset here. This needs to be much longer. Actually, to really tell this right, we're going to have to go ahead and animate pack person's mouth. So let's do that first. Let's click on pack person, hold middle mouse button, and then tap Alt, and we're going to create some shape keys. So let's go to the data curve tab here and bring up shape keys and close this up. Here in object mode, we can press plus to create the basis key, and then we'll press plus again. And this creates the first key or morph. So what I'm going to do to help me as a guide is I'm going to duplicate and then G to grab and move this back a little bit. And then I'm just going to rotate it around so I have a guide. And I'm also going to turn on cavity, which should make it easier for me to see turn on both here. And now I can see the gap in here. Okay, in this first key, I'm going to press tab to go into edit mode. And I'm going to hold shift and right mouse, and I'm going to click this point here and shift S and cursor to selected. And I need that there so that I can switch the transform pivot point to 3D cursor. So when I press R to rotate, I'll shift select this bottom here. So I've got this point and this point selected, shift select that it rotates like this. Now, obviously we're going to have to do a little bit of adjustment here. So let's make the first one right about here, and then I'll select this point and shift select this one, R to rotate, and a similar thing like that. And that'll be our first key. Press tab to go back into object mode. We can adjust his value. You can see that moving a little bit. And then we'll create another one. Press tab to go into edit mode again. And we'll rotate this down a bit. This time we're going to have to adjust the curve, and we've got our guide back there so we can make sure it looks right. And then we can select this point, shift select this point, R to rotate, and adjust our guide. Looks good. Tab to go into object mode. Adjust this value. Looking pretty good so far. I think probably one more key we'll do a press plus. Tab to go into edit mode. And make sure these 2 points are selected here. R to rotate, and I'll bring that, hold control to get it flat. And then I'll adjust this curve handle until this looks right. And then shift select that, R to rotate. Hold control as well, adjust this curve point. And there we go there. Now we can uncheck this where it says relative, and what this will do is allow us to where we don't have to adjust the value of every single one of our keys. We can just adjust one long value that will control all 3 keys in a row. So then we can do like this, and it comes down and looks pretty cool. Chomp, chomp, chomp. Okay, so now that we've got our shape keys down, we can animate this pretty easily. So let's go ahead and get rid of what we were using for our guide. So I'll just click that and delete it. Back to Pac-Man here, and I'll bring my timeline open a little more, open this up, click this open, and then we want to either press this little button or we can just tap I to insert a keyframe. And there you can see this new little icon show up here in the animation timeline, and this is our keyframe animation. So I'll close that up because I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in this. And since this top frame here is just showing a summary of this, I can also close that because I only need to be aware of this dot here. This line, that's my animation line for this keyframes. Shape key stuff. So we've got the 0 there, and then here's 0, here's 1 second, and the little gray line between 0 to 1 is a ½ second, so in between there is a ¼ of a second. And that's about how long I want the one chompy to go. So we'll bring this value until it closes, which is right at 30. And then we'll tap I again. So we got to open, close. Now we've got an open keyframe and then a closed keyframe, so I can just duplicate these and then box select, duplicate, box select, duplicate, and then duplicate these one more time. And we've got some chompies. Okay, so we've still got a little bit to work out with our chompies, but getting there. Go ahead and close this menu for now. Okay, so to make this a little easier to plot out, I'm going to, with my pack person selected, tap A to select all these keyframes, right click, and under Interpolation Mode, I'm going to pick Linear. And I'm going to do the same thing for my pack Pellets. So I'll tap all these after selecting it, right click, Interpolation Mode, Linear. And we'll click back on the pack person, and let's see how this goes. Much, much better. Easy in, easy out is nice, except for when you're creating retro, legally distinct animations. Then you want linear, because that is like clockwork. There may be like a tad frame here where things aren't kosher. I think we can adjust that just in the offset of the Y value here. And also, let's disable overlay stuff so I can see this a little more clearly. So that chompies. Where does the first one start? Maybe we need to increase the count. But we'd have to increase it on frame 1 here. There we go. I think, yeah, that's what we're going to want there. And we'll press I to overwrite that keyframe. Now we got chompies. Let's make sure that this is behind. Move it a little bit back behind there. There we go. Turn that off again. Check out my chompies. Except it's being a little troublesome right there towards the end. let's see. So we could adjust the keyframe of this, turn that back on, and this is the count keyframe. So we just move it a little bit behind, and then I think it will be finally behaving. Champa, 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 num, num, chomp. Okay, with that sorted out, I can turn overlays back on, bring this back to 0. Now we need to animate our Blinky. And so Blinky's just standing there. We will press G to grab and then immediately click to insert a keyframe here. And then standing, standing, standing. Wait, what's going on? About 1 second in. So we want that to be the same from there to there. So we'll duplicate that standing still. And then at this point, starts to get a little worried. So, okay, I forgot I left my transform pivot point on cursor. Let's put it back to what it normally is on, which is medium point. And then, okay, so a little bit frame after, we'll rotate and scale. It's getting scared. And then rotate and scale down a little bit this way. And then right when he's about to get chompified, we'll duplicate that still frame again. So then he's out of there. And he gets there a little bit sooner. Got to get there a little bit sooner before pack person does. So at right about 407, G to grab, middle mouse to constrain, put him there. And then let's turn off auto keying so we don't mess something up. Chomp, 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 chomp. Ah! Yeah, all right, cool. Okay, so we got the chompies, but where are my glowies at? So let's add some glowies. So let's go to World Rendering, Viewport Shading, and click on the World tab, bring our color down to black. Then I want my Blinky to have a material, so I'll press New. Gonna make him blue. Going to bring this up a little bit so I can click and drag this base color to Emission. And we'll click on the Pellets, click New, and we'll drag the base color also to their emission color. So basically all of the lighting from this little scene is going to be from the glowies. And then we want pack person. He's got to have a new material. Make him a nice yellow. Drag that down to emission. And I'm thinking Blinky needs some white eyes behind there. So I'm going to press Shift A and add a circle. And then I'm going to, trying to snap into, there we go. R to rotate, Control to constrain. Bring this behind the Blinkster. And let's go to here. Under shape, make sure that's 2D, fill mode, both, and give that the same material we gave the pellets. Okay, great. Now it's got some white eyes. All I need to do is make sure that's a little good there, and then I'll shift select Blinky, Control P to parent our little white background for the eyes to Blinky there. So when Blinky moves, that moves. Nice. Okay, so this is not nearly glowy enough. So let's go to Render Properties, turn on Bloom, and then back to Material tab, animate some emission here. So I'm going to tap I over emission with timeline to 0, and then about a quarter keyframe in, bring that way up to, let's say, 15, tap I again. So down here where it says material in the shader node here, these are the keyframes of interest that we just created. So this one is the low glow, this one's the high glow, so we can just copy and paste those, duplicate duplicate, duplicate, and that's about the extent of the animation. So Blinky's got some glowies, but I think the pellets also need some glowies, so let's click on those and do the same thing. Tap I. Click open this material so we can see the shader node tree keyframe. Bring that to about a quarter of a second. Bring that up to, I think just 10 will work for that. Tap I. And then we can grab these two keyframes, duplicate them, box select, duplicate, box select, duplicate, box select. And now we got all kinds of glowies. We got a crazy run-in ghost. And look, all Pack Person wanted to do was give him some sweet kisses. He didn't want to eat them. All this time, Blinky was scared for no reason. Okay, so we got the chompies, we got the glowies, but where are the shinies? To make the shinies, let's press Shift-C to put the cursor back at the center of the grid, Shift-A. This time add a mesh circle and click this open and change the fill type to Ingon. And then we can close that and then scale this way up. And I want to give this a material and turn the roughness all the way down. Then in the render properties, let's turn on screen space reflections and refraction. There we can see some shinies, and let's turn off half res trace so we get better quality there. Drop our platform down a little bit, turn off overlays, and there we got some nice shinies. So if you've never rendered an animation in Blender before, all you need to do is press this to jump into the camera. Now previously we hid the camera so you could turn it back on so you could see it in the 3D viewport. Then you want to scroll up with your mouse so that the main viewing area of the camera gets larger, because everything inside of this box is what's going to get rendered. In fact, probably be a good idea to click the camera in the outliner, click on the camera here, and under viewport display, where it says Basse Balti, or however you pronounce that, bring this all the way up so you know you can see only what's going to get rendered there. Then open up the sidebar and under view, click lock camera to V. Bring that out a little bit. Lock camera to view. Lock camera to view. And now, whenever we move or navigate around in the 3D view, the camera will move with us, and we can easily hop out of the camera by pressing this button here, or hop back into it by pressing this button here. And now you want to set up your framing, how you want things to go. So the camera will focus on whatever you click on. So we'll click the Blinky, and that way, well, it will if you have rotate around selection set in your preferences. That's pretty easy to set if you don't, and that way whatever you have clicked on will be your focus. So then you could start this at, say, maybe we're just watching Blinky minding his own business. I mean Blinky, legally distinct Blinky. We could zoom out a little bit here. And there we go. We could also animate the camera, etc., but that's getting a little bit beyond the scope of this video. Then if you wanted to render, you would just want to make sure that under output properties, under output, you click this button to select a location on your computer where you want to render. And then so I would change this to either AVI, JPEG, or MPEG. And then you just go to render, render animation, and you've got a fun little animation. So that's going to do it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe if you're not subscribed. Press the like button. That really helps me a lot, and I'm so thankful to everyone who's been doing that. And I'll see you next time. Curve Tools. This add-on provides an extensive set of tools for the manipulating and editing of curves. Several CAD-style curve tools are included. Activation. Open Blender and go to Preferences, then the Add-ons tab. Click Add Curve, then Curve Tools to enable the script. Interface. This add-on is split into sub-panels, with each panel having its own specific set of tools. Curve Info. Curve. Print spline segments and empty splines information to the info header and info editor. Same for spline and segment. Length. Calculate the length of the curve and show in the add-ons panel. Curve edit menu. Fillet, chamfer, round or chamfer, Bezier point, fillets. Outline. Create an outline around a selected curve object. Recursive offset. Create an offsetted array. Separate. Offset selected. Separate the outline mesh from the original. Subdivide. Subdivide selection or filleted corners. Multi-subdivide. Subdivide with levels of detail. Split at vertex. Cuts the selected points, creating openings. Discretize curve. Disconnect the selected points. Array splines. Create an array of the selected curves in edit mode. Intersect menu. 2D curve Boolean. Boolean selected curves on a 2D plane. Intersect curves. Create an intersection between flat curves on the same plane. Surfaces menu. By rail. It creates a surface from a profile in two paths. The order in which you select the curves and its direction is important to make this function properly. Convert Bezier to surface. Convert the selected curve to a NURB surface. Convert faces to Bezier. Select faces and convert them to Bezier curves. Loft menu. Loft. Loft a mesh object between two Bezier curves. Auto loft. Turn on to store the loft data if you move or edit the curves. Update auto loft. Press this button to update the new loft mesh position after moving or editing parent curves. Sanitize menu. Set origin to spline start. Move the origin of the curve to the first point. Reset scale. Reset the object scale to 111. Cleanup. Remove doubles. Remove doubled points. Short splines. Remove selected splines based on a threshold. Join splines. Join neighboring splines. Join selected splines based on a threshold. Utilities menu. Curve resolution. Show, escape, display the resolution in the interface with a colored overlay. Spline order. Show, escape, display, and arrange the sequence. And that's it. Thanks very much for watching, especially if you stuck around to the end of this video. Please subscribe if you're not subscribed. And let me know down in the comments below if you plan on using this add-on, if you think it would be helpful to you at all. If you've got some interesting ideas for use cases, stuff like that, that would be really cool to share with me and everyone else. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.